This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu has addressed the nation 2 days after a nationwide protest focused on highlighting the economic hardship faced by many Nigerians. The president's 23-minute-long address, while appealing to Nigerians to call off the protest, also mentioned the need of his administration to take on difficult economic policies for the good of the nation. Joining us this morning is public affairs analyst A.B. Bozimo to speak on the president's speech. Good morning, Mr. Bozimo. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello, good morning.
Glad to have you.
Even good morning to all of the wonderful listeners out there.
Right. So to get right into it, what did you make of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's speech on Sunday?
I felt it was 17 minutes too long. In my view, the key matter underpinning the entire agitation is the cost of living, the current cost of living, which is predicated on the removal of subsidy by and large. Of course, there are many other affairs, but that is at the core of the statement about end hunger. Hunger is a current, present, continuous thing in the lives of many Nigerians. What I witnessed yesterday was a speech that would be worthy of delivering in the run-up to the 2027 elections about all the things you will, can, shall, and have done. All those, in my view, are utterly irrelevant to a person experiencing hunger in real time right now. If I were to have a chance to speak to the president, I would have said, sir, talking of subsidy, that is a core issue that has affected everything. Announce to the people, we shall temporarily suspend subsidy for 3 months. In 3 months, we shall have all Nigerian refineries working. If they are not working, we shall sack every single member of staff that is responsible and replace them with more competent people. And we shall continue that until refineries work. Trust me, with that threat, our refineries will work in 2 months and maybe 28 days. But you go on a long story about loans and this and that and CNG buses. Can you, Stephen, have you ever eaten a CNG bus?
No, I haven't.
It is not the point that is making people move right now. I mean, I'll say this positively. The president acknowledged that deaths occurred. However, it is on his watch and it was preventable because this was a speech that came after what could have been prevented initially. They were speaking in echo chambers, meeting leaders, meeting senators, meeting, what's the word? Traditional rulers. Why didn't they speak to the people before? I want to go on record as saying anybody who was engaged in destruction was a criminal and should be properly prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Let's not bandy any words about that. This was billed and supposed to be and has largely been a peaceful protest. In pockets of areas, violence occurred. Those people are criminals. They are not going with the ethos of the protest.
Now, that's a similar sentiment to what the president expressed. But a part of his text, and I want to quote that out specifically, it seems to indicate that the loss of lives and the looting of properties across the country is the fault of the protesters. And I quote from his speech directly: "The destruction of properties set us back as a nation, as scarce resources will again be used to restore them." I am especially pained by the loss of lives in Borno, Jigawa, Kano, Kaduna and other states, the destruction of public facilities in some states, and the wanton looting of supermarkets and shops, contrary to the promise of protest organizers that the protest would be peaceful across the country. Now, I quote this out to just bring the point that we have been talking about the protests before they happened and the possible response of security agents to the protests. I wonder, and I do have to ask this almost repeatedly, if there was any way the president's speech before the protest could have done anything to see that the protest occurred but would occur peacefully. Is it possible for the president's speech to have ensured that peace would reign throughout the protests?
In pointing fingers, as the president has chosen to do, he's failing to hold up a mirror. The entire premise of the protest has occurred because of policies that he has put in place. And indeed, before saying that part, he did say the buck stopped at his table. It's a pity that he will acknowledge that the buck stopped at his table and then in the same speech leap over and point fingers at people who planned a peaceful protest. If the entire reason for the protest didn't exist, there would be no protest. And I will say that in that entire speech, I did not hear a frontal tackling of the issues that were raised. Yes, some of them, in my view, even are esoteric. 10 points is a lot. The core, I repeat, is the cost of living crisis, largely predicated on the removal of subsidy. I have argued, and I will continue to say, I am a fuel subsidy removal hawk. It is a waste of resources in the country. However, you don't do that until you have prepared the grounds to make it feasible. I'll use that example that's very easy for anybody to understand. Many years ago, a relation needed to do a serious operation. It had been scheduled, the doctors were in place and everything. When the people took the patient to the hospital, they examined the person and they said, in the current state of health, they cannot do this operation yet. Please take the person back, wait about a week, do the following and come back. At that point, the doctors were in place, the medication was in place, the hospital was in place, the skills were all there, but the patient wasn't prepared. So you prepare the patient for everything else to go right, and thank God the operation went right. Look at Nigeria. I admit that it's a waste of money paying subsidy on a government official who has 15 vehicles when I and 15 other people are inside one bus. They are the ones enjoying. But you prepare the country by making sure that the refining capacity is in place and the famous CNG buses are already in place. You don't remove the subsidy in advance. So it's not the policy that's the problem, it's how it's being executed. I would aver at this point that it is not a lack of knowledge or skill, but a lack of competent execution that is the bane of the current Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration.
Well, Mr. Bozimo, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on this conversation. A.B. Bozimo is a political and public affairs analyst. He joined us this morning to react to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's speech, which came 2 days after nationwide protests had taken place across Nigeria. The speech ostensibly called on Nigerians to call off the protest and outlined the necessity of the economic policies which this administration took in 2023. We ask that you stay tuned to your Beyond the News station. The conversations continue in just a moment.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This Is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that their vote does not count. If their vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. And we go beyond the news.
This is Now Breakfast.
The Nigerian National Committee of International Press Institute (IPI) Nigeria has faulted the conduct of security personnel at the nationwide hardship protest which began on the 1st of August. A statement by IPI questioned the use of live ammunition in the management of the protest, as well as alleging that journalists were targeted by security agents. This morning, I'm joined by the legal advisor at IPI Nigeria, Mr. Toby Shoniyi, to discuss why these actions must be investigated and stopped. Mr. Shoniyi, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Right. So, to lay background to this conversation, can you speak to the treatment of journalists who were covering the protests that started on the 1st of August?
Yeah, thank you. It's been reported in virtually all newspapers and other media that journalists were deliberately targeted, especially by police, because journalists are easily identifiable when they are doing their work. You see the camera, you see the TV camera. Some of them wear vests in which press is boldly written on them, but still the police still chose to target them. And that is very alarming. We suspect that there is a deliberate attempt to stop journalists from covering the protest, because there is no other reason why journalists will be targeted like that. We recognize the right of the police to do their work, but they must also recognize the right of journalists to do their work too. It's a democracy, it's a constitutional right. Freedom of expression is constitutional right. Freedom of the press is constitutional right. The police also have the right to maintain law and order. A journalist is not threatening anyone, it's not carrying stick, it's merely recording what is happening. So it's very worrisome and very alarming.
So the statement that IPI has released specifically calls the targeting of journalists a wild shot at democracy, at Nigeria's democracy. And as you have said, there is a need for journalists to carry out their job and report what is happening. I wonder if there is any reaction, at least at this time, from the federal government to the statement that IPI has released.
Yeah, well, as of now, there have been none, except the usual police general denial. The police will always deny, but there are evidence to support the claims that we made in the statement. But it is even surprising that yesterday, when the president addressed the nation, he chose not to condemn attacks both on the press and on the protesters. That omission, to me, is like enabling them to do more, to cause more havoc and to attack journalists more.
Right.
Because if the president has used the occasion to say, stop using lethal forces against journalists, against protesters, they are likely to step back. But the way it is, it's like they have been emboldened to keep doing this because the condemnation is not coming from the right quarters. They have not reacted, but we expect the usual denial.
Right. As we round off the conversation this morning, there are newspaper reports, as you have pointed out, that actually indicate that journalists were attacked. One freelance journalist, at least, I believe by the name of Ayola Babalola, was reportedly arrested in Abuja. I wonder if you can speak to this. Has IPI been in contact with the police to talk about the release of protesters and most especially journalists who were arrested during the course of the protests?
Yeah, we have not contacted the police for that. We'll have to do a thorough investigation on the number of arrests, the people that were arrested, and luckily for us, partners like the Nigerian Bar Association is already working on how to secure the release of those arrested. Set aside some, they've identified some lawyers that will work pro bono to secure the release. We thank the NBA for this. We are also aware that Nigerian Medical Association too have directed its members to treat anyone that is injured. That is NNA. So, for now, we have not started working on how to secure the release, and the organization, the media organization whose journalist was arrested, we also need to contact IPI so that we can follow up to secure the release of any journalist that is going to change. We'll certainly do that.
So, to finalize this conversation, I wonder if you can speak as to why it is necessary for the police to not target journalists who are covering national issues, especially things that are that can be described as disruptive, which is what the protests are. Why is it important for journalists to cover these events, and why is it important for security agencies not to target journalists?
Yeah, certainly we are. The first thing is that we are in it together. We have the first foundation is that it is a democratic right to do so. We are in a democracy. Even under the military, journalists did their job. How much more under a civilian rule? We are expected to do our job. We can't shy away from it. Head or tail, we'll have to do the job. So now the security agencies must understand this. Just like it is incumbent in them to maintain law and order, it's the old on us as journalists to tell the people what is happening. Many people that could not join the protest, they depend on us to know what is happening. So we cannot run away from the job. So it's a job that we have to do, and they have to learn to live with it. They have to learn to be professional. They have to learn, to be trained on how to provide security for protesters. Protest is happening somewhere in the UK, as we talk, elsewhere it's happening. But the ability of the security agency there to maintain and sustain the peace is what makes a lot of difference. So, no matter how hard they try, the journalist isn't going to disappear. The journalist is not going to go away. So they have to go back to their tactical rooms and say, okay, how do we do our job without stopping journalists from doing their job?
Right. Mr. Shoni, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on this conversation this morning. Toby Shoni is a legal practitioner, more specifically the legal advisor for the Nigerian National Committee of the International Press Institute. He joined us this morning to speak on the organization's condemnation of the use of force by security operatives on journalists who are covering the nationwide protests against economic hardships, which has been going on since the 1st of August.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.